Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia. I'm sharing no nonsense advice for navigating dating and relationships with confidence and ease. Whether you've been dating for a while or you're just starting out, I believe dating can be fun. And today we are celebrating. This is a special episode because it is my 200th episode, and we're also celebrating 3 years of this podcast. This is wild. And I just want to take a second to thank you, dear listener, for listening to my show, reaching out to me, following, reviewing, rating, and sharing these episodes with your friends who are also dating and going through it. Every little way you interact with my show makes a big difference to me and it helps other people discover it. So thank you so much. And I am blown away by what we've been able to do in terms of reaching people from all walks of life all over the world who are navigating dating and relationships. So thank you for being here. When I started this podcast in my kitchen in my apartment in Seattle 3 years ago, it was just something fun for me to do on the side, a creative outlet so I could yap about dating with the idea that maybe a couple people would listen and be inspired to start or, stay motivated to keep going. Now I'm here 3 years later and talking to hundreds of thousands of people, including you. And let me just tell you, I'm just, again, so grateful you're here. This show has now reached 3 million downloads, and we have listeners in over 80 countries, which is crazy. I'm still on a mission to inspire you and motivate you because let's be real, the conversation in today's dating culture can be quite negative. And I fully plan on continuing to be a positive and practical voice that will keep you kind of away from the negativity and pessimism. Sometimes it feels good to participate in that because it validates what you're going through, but it doesn't actually help you move forward. Finding love and being in an amazing relationship can be in the cards for you if you focus on the right things. And that is what today's episode is about. Today, we're going to reflect on some of the advice that seems to resonate the most and comes up the most when I have guests on the show. Because 200 episodes later, I can say I've learned a lot about dating too, even though I've been in a relationship since I started the show. So I'm going to go through 10 themes, 10 lessons that have come up throughout the show so far, with the hopes that this can be a refresher for you to focus on what matters and ground you in your journey. You're on the right track. Let's just recenter on what will actually get you to your goals. And throughout this episode, I'm going to call out a bunch of previous episodes, and I won't be able to link to all of them because that would be linking to like the entire catalog. But just know I'll call out the numbers of each episode I'm talking about so you can go back and listen if you want to. And before we get into it, real quick, just a reminder that you can reach out to me on anytime on Instagram at dating.intentionally. You could submit a dating dilemma for me to answer on the podcast or on YouTube in the show notes below. And I love getting your comments on YouTube and Spotify if you're listening there. Okay, let's do it. I've got 10 core pieces of advice that have come out from 200 episodes. We're starting with number 1. You can date however you want. This is my favorite lesson from the show. There are so many voices in the dating space telling you what's right and wrong, but ultimately you can do whatever the fuck you want and you can date in a way that makes sense to you as long as you are being a decent human being to yourself and others. That's the golden standard right there. And what I mean by this is you can split the bill. You can choose not to. You can kiss on the first date or not. You can approach dating by being friends first. You can choose to avoid the apps or exclusively use them. You can meet someone on Instagram or Reddit or Strava, which is a running app. You can date within your religion or not. You can go on a dating spree and meet 64 people in 1 year, or you can go on one first date a year. You can have a kid on your own and then decide to start dating. You can do whatever makes sense for you and show up however you need. You are in the driver's seat. You get to make your own rules. And something I hope my show gives you is the inspiration and empowerment to test out different approaches along the way so that you can figure out what actually aligns with your values and what you're looking for, because that's how you figure out what actually works for you. And ultimately, the way you date might not make sense to anyone else. And that's okay. It's not supposed to necessarily. It's supposed to make sense for you and your unique situation, whatever season of life you're in right now, and whatever you really care about. The guest episodes that come to mind for this nugget of advice is number 52 with Sade Curry. And she came on to talk about dating after divorce. And I remember her mentioning that she would text guys before a meeting and tell them how she preferred to be greeted to, avoid something that she wasn't comfortable with. I love that example because she's just unapologetically being herself and she's creating her own comfort and safety. And that's the point. You showing up authentically is how you will attract the right person for you. So you can throw out any dating rules or dating advice that doesn't align. And I want you to date in the most authentic way possible. Another example was when Jeff Gunther came on, that's Therapy Jeff, and he said he asked some of his previous first dates for feedback, which he found helpful. And that was in episode 141. Some people say feedback, don't do that. Like, don't ask for feedback. He did it and he found it helpful. Another example is Sabrina Zohar, who came on and talked about how she ended up in a long term relationship with someone she hooked up with on the first date, which you hear you're not supposed to do. That was episode 137, by the way. I also want to call out my episode with Dr. Jenny Young. She came on to talk about the burned haystack dating method, which she created. And that is a very unique approach to dating that doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but she's built a community around it. And if you want to check it out, that is episode 167. That was a super fun episode. All I'm saying is you can date however you want. It doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. It just needs to align with what you care about and what you ultimately want for your love life. Okay, the second little piece of advice, this comes up a lot, is that manifestation weirdly works. So I'm not the most woo woo person, or maybe I need to like reshape that in my identity because I say I'm not, but then I'm also like kind of into manifestation sometimes. So I'll get back to you on that one. But this year in particular, I had several guests come on to talk about how they wrote down what they wanted in a partner or put it out there, just like they externalized what they were looking for and quickly found someone after that. Look, we all know manifestation on its own doesn't work. You need to align your actions with what you want, which is what dating intentionally is all about. But the second part of that, the what you want part, you do need to get crystal clear on. And it's wise to put that out in the universe some way. If you need inspiration, I highly recommend checking out the episode I did this year with matchmaker Maria, where she talks about writing a manifest and sending it to someone or sticking it somewhere for a stranger to find. And that's like really just putting it out there in the universe. That was episode 175. This method worked for me too, in a way. I wrote down my 5 needs and I found a partner who embodied them. Of course, I did a lot of legwork. You know, my husband, didn't just pop up out of nowhere by surprise. I was actively looking to find this person, but I kept that list very at the center of what I was doing. I looked at it all the time. And as I was dating people, I would kind of go through and literally check off or take notes about whether or not they could meet those specific needs, you know, as I was getting to know them. Anyway, no matter how you do it, I don't care how you choose to externalize what you're looking for. This is your sign to get out your pen and paper, get out your voice memos, write it down. I don't care where. Write down exactly how you want to feel with a partner, what you want a day in the life of your relationship to look like, and what qualities that you need in a relationship to feel safe, happy, and valued. Do it tonight. Do it this weekend. You have nothing to lose and lots of clarity to gain. And who knows, by externalizing it, you might just be one step closer to finding that person. All right, the third lesson that I have kind of pulled out from my catalog here is that fixing your picker actually means fixing your attachment wounds. What do you think? Agree, disagree? This is a theme I noticed. It came up a lot. This is about how people who have found love and at last have gotten uncomfortable and faced their own shit. And that is what made them choose differently in their dating journey. They started viewing who they dated differently when they started healing their attachment wounds, which you can do some of that work on your own and you do a lot of it in a relationship. But if you keep going for the same type of person or keep falling into the same dynamic, that means that you need to look inward and try to figure out why you keep choosing those partners and heal that part of yourself. You know, here's an example. One thing I see a lot of in the conversations I have with listeners and on Instagram is that we focus so much on what other people are doing, if they like us, how they're showing interest, what they're saying, what they're not saying. But we're not paying attention to how we are showing up, what we're saying, what we're doing, and what we might have to face to move forward. Like, we need to pay more attention to how we're getting in our own way. Because what happens is the focus on what everyone else is doing becomes a distraction or an excuse sometimes to not focus on what you are doing and what you are ignoring in yourself. And I'm not saying that all of the relationships you've been in that ended are your fault. Not at all. It's more that we just need to shift the focus on why you are choosing people who aren't emotionally available or pursuing people who clearly aren't a match or are not interested in you. That's the work. That's the thing you actually have control over, not what the other person does. We've heard about this journey of fixing your picker, of healing your attachment wounds from guests like Louise Rumball in episode 171 and Caroline Winkler in episode 185 about breaking her codependency patterns. We also had Claire Cui in episode 163 who talked about working through her anxious attachment, and Natalie Kennedy in episode 153 who talked about overcoming relationship anxiety and relationship OCD. So these are just four examples of women who have really done the work, looked inward, dug deep, faced the messy stuff, and then came out of that choosing partners differently. And you can go back and listen to those episodes and see that pattern. So the advice here is keep working on you, especially if you're going for people who are emotionally unavailable and then you also stay when you figure that out. Like, no, you can't know off the bat if someone is emotionally available, but what do you do when you find out? Are you someone who tries to fix them? Are you someone who thinks that if you just show up a certain way, they'll wake up and show you the love that you want? If that's a yes, that's something to look into. And so many people don't do this because it's scary and it's hard, and it means looking under the hood of your emotions and inner world. And sometimes we don't like what we find there. You're not alone in that. Ultimately, you can change who you are emotionally attracted to. It's like changing the frequency on the radio and tuning into a channel that's better for you. I personally loved hearing this advice echoed back in guest interviews because it's what I went through too in my journey. I worked hard in therapy for a long time to face the parts of myself that I didn't want to address, that were actually holding me back from the love I wanted. And they're holding me back from building a healthy relationship dynamic. The work is hard, but it's worth it. And I'm just putting this out in the universe, but I think I will be able to have my therapist on as a guest next year. She said I had to wait 2 years until after we stopped working with each other to have her on the pod, and that's coming up this spring. So I'm fingers crossed hoping she will agree to an interview next year. Wouldn't that be awesome? Because she's amazing and I learned so much from her. Okay, moving on. The fourth piece of advice that I've picked up from 200 episodes is adjusting your expectations is key. So, this is another clear lesson that has jumped out of me because so much pain, confusion, miscommunications, and disappointment in dating and relationships is caused by expectations. Expectations stop us from seeing who the other person really is and being able to accept them for who they are because we can't see them clearly when we're looking through the lens of who we want them to be and how they can best serve us. Yeah, we can't see people clearly when we're looking through the lens of how are they serving me and who do I want them to be. We can only see them clearly when we're looking at them without the lens of our expectations. So, what's the advice? Remove your expectations, drop them. Let people show you who they are. To love someone is to accept them fully and to not try to change them. To love someone is to let them be enough just by existing. We can't do that when we have expectations. And this is something that I learned before doing the podcast in therapy. My therapist told me expectations will disappoint you. And I'll never forget, at that point in my life where she said that. And it really helped me. It's like, okay, what would my life look like if I just stopped expecting people to act in a script that's in my brain, and let them just actually show up as they are. This has come up a few times with guests. I can think of Damona Hoffman, and that was episode 54. That's all about how dating expectations get in our way. Also, Todd Barrett's episode 90. We got into this too. Love that episode. Oh, another one is my episode with Julie and Yue from Dateable, episode 143. So if you want to learn more about how expectations get in our way, check out those episodes. And I think once you allow people to just show up, you start to see them so much more clearly, and you can decide if you want to accept them, if you can accept them. Expectations set people up for failure because they're unspoken. They live in your brain. And it's like you're silently testing people, which doesn't set anyone up for building trust or allow them to be authentic. I think this is the toughest one to swallow of all the advice that I'm sharing today. Let me know if you agree. Moving on to number 5. Your journey doesn't have to look like anyone else's. One thing I love about podcasting is connecting to people who are different than me, who have different journeys. And on this show, we've had women who have met their partners at 40 and later, who had kids at 40 and later, who dated single parents, who got divorced and used the apps for the first time in their 50s, who were single for most of their 30s and then found love later. It's not too late. If you're listening to this, if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, it's not too late. And I've learned, I hope that you've picked up on this, that your journey is your own. You're writing your love story right now. Like all the ups and downs you're going through, it's part of your whole love story. I want to remind you, you're on the correct timeline. And I know it's so hard to hear when all you want is just to find your person already, or maybe you pictured yourself married and with kids at this point in your life, and that's not the case. It's hard to accept that and figure out a way forward, but I hope that by being exposed to people who have found happiness and peace and fulfillment by taking different paths because things didn't work out the way they thought they would either, that you can find hope and inspiration and trust that you can build an amazing life no matter how things play out. It's not all in our control. And I'm excited to keep having people who have gone down different paths on the show. If you need inspiration right now, you can go check out my episode with Jackie Glazer, who got married at 40 and since our recording had a baby with her husband. That's episode 68. You can also hear from Tiffany Chung, who is bi and dating as a single parent, in episode 64. I also did an episode with a listener named Sarah, who became a single mom by choice in her early 40s and found love after her son was born. And that's episode 100. She's now married. Oh, and the last one I want to call out is our favorite, Allie Jackson, who has dated for most of her 30s and met her long-term partner in her like mid to late 30s, and that is episode 161. So go check those out if you need some inspiration. All right, moving on to lesson number 6. If you are not ready to talk about sex, you're probably not ready to have it. We've had a number of amazing sex therapists, sex experts, and educators on to talk about how to talk about sex, STIs, exploring different sexualities, and doing that all while meeting new people, right? It's one thing to talk about sex with someone you've been with for a while and you have more of a foundation of trust. It's a whole other ballgame to talk about sex with someone you're just getting to know. And I think the biggest lesson is that if you want to be mature and safe and also just feel comfortable, you need to be able to talk about sex with the person you want to have sex with. And that includes what you like and what they like, which is going to lead to usually a much better experience for both of you if you both know going into it what each other likes. You also want to talk about what makes it safe for you. That's protection. That's other things that you might need to feel safe in this environment with someone. Any other concerns, including STIs, testing, really anything you're concerned with when it comes to sex. If you can't speak up and talk about it, consider that you're not ready to jump into bed with that person and get naked with each other. It sounds unsexy, right? That's really what it is. It sounds unsexy, but I think that's one piece of advice that keeps coming up over and over with every sex related guest I have on. It's just like you have to talk about it and build that muscle because then you're going to have a much better and probably safer sex life. This advice also aligns with the slow burn and slowing down so that you can make a decision to have sex more consciously and avoid getting hurt if you're the kind of person who attaches early after sex. And again, like I said, talking about sex will most likely lead to better sex. You'll feel more safe. You'll feel more on the same page. And all of the episodes that I've had with guests on the topic also talk about when to bring this stuff up and what to say because it is tricky. It can be awkward. Some episodes that come to mind are the one I did with Vanessa and Xander Marin. That is episode 123. Also, my first episode with Clara Perlman, that was episode 66, and Ella Dawson, episode 104, where we talk about STIs. All right, moving on to lesson number 6 is, I think we all know this one, don't chase the spark. This has been a big theme across guest episodes and in my entire show. And just in the conversations I've had about dating with so many people, the books I've read, It's everywhere. And I think it's just, we do need to say this, you know? The spark isn't something that defines the success or a relationship, and it's not something that can predict the future success of it. A lot of us start our journey, maybe when we were younger, or if you're just starting out with dating, we start chasing the spark because it feels so good. It's exciting. It represents what we've been told love feels like across all kinds of media. And I don't think feeling the spark means the relationship is doomed. It's just more that it's not an indicator of success, and you don't need it to have an amazing, passionate relationship. The spark, by the way, is just instant attraction. It's something that is there in a flash and it fades. The spark could be, an instant physical or mental connection, or both at the same time, where you just hit it off immediately and you find them, attractive right away. But the truth is, it doesn't always happen that quickly. And that doesn't mean it's not a match if it's not immediate. I feel like this is advice that I came into the show with, when I started, and it has carried through. No one out there is saying, go chase a spark and look for instant connection. No one. Now, I get it because, look, not everyone who is dating listens to this podcast, even though maybe they might benefit from that. So, yes, you are going to run into people in your journey who you go out with one time and then you get a text from them saying that they didn't feel a spark. So frustrating. Unfortunately, many daters out there have not learned this advice. And I hope that you can take this knowledge that the spark doesn't mean anything deep and give people a chance. Get to know people. Not for too long. I'm talking about, a few dates here, 3 to 4 dates, and then you can decide if there's a connection. All right, we have a few more here. Number 8 is work on mindfulness and use the power of the pause. I've had so many guests come on to talk about how we can gain control over our minds, pause, and think about our next move instead of just letting our anxiety and emotions run the show. We can get our emotions under control instead of allowing them to control us. I think this is such an important skill to learn in dating because there will be things in your journey, whether you're dating or you're seeing someone right now, that baffle you, that frustrate you, confuse you, stress you out, and make you question your self worth. So, being able to pause and stop the spiral before it happens and say to yourself, wait, does this emotion I'm feeling right now define my entire experience? Does it define who I am? No. And you can let yourself feel things and validate your own emotions without letting them drive each decision you make. It's a difference between calling it off with someone because you haven't heard from them in 2 days and deciding to check in with them first to see if they're okay or if something happened because you might not have the whole story. In that moment, it's frustrating. You're able to give that person grace and act differently. It's the difference between getting scared and pulling away and being able to sit in the moment of discomfort so you can actually be vulnerable and real and connect. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You experience these things and you have the power to decide what to do with them. They're just information, and not acting on every feeling you have is a step towards emotional maturity and intelligence. Again, we're not ignoring our feelings, we're not shoving them down, we're not dismissing them. We're just not acting on every single one. For deeper dives on this, if you missed it, you can check out my episodes with Britt Frank, that is number 173, and Dr. Caroline Leaf, that's episode 187. We dive deep into how this actually works in our brains and how we can stop the spiral and pause before acting. And the longer you're able to pause, the better. So it takes practice, but super, super important to learn. Also, it's super important to learn for your relationships. Like if you're in a relationship, even friendships, family relationships, you've got to learn the pause. All right, number 9 is people act the way they do because of who they are, not who you are. What I mean by that is people's behavior is more about them, not you. How someone reacts or acts has far more to do with their own history, wounds, fears, traumas, and coping mechanisms than your worth and who you are. Look, it's natural, like it's human. We all have egos to take someone's actions personally. We interpret, that's our filter of how we see the world. Like they didn't text me because they think this, especially in dating, right? But this habit does keep us stuck. We have to have that detachment of like, oh, they're acting this way because of them, not me. When you stop taking everything so personally, you're able to see things from a different point of view, not beat yourself up, not tear yourself down, not build this story of like, oh, they acted this way because I'm not good enough. And then you're then able to see it of like, oh, they acted this way because they're going through whatever they're going through, or they've gone through things and they're bringing that to the table. We're all bringing these things to the table. So it helps you have more resilience in dating. It helps you have more resilience in your relationships, right? Like instead of spiraling about what you did wrong, you can step back and ask yourself, do I like how they're showing up? And is this behavior something I want to live with long term? And yeah, obviously it still hurts when someone pulls away or ghosts or shuts down or rejects you. I'm not saying that it's not going to hurt, but it hurts less when you realize that their actions say more about what they're protecting themselves from than you. For example, the person who's scared to commit, that's their fear, not a reflection of your value. The person who needs constant reassurance, that's their attachment system trying to feel safe. The person who pulls away and then comes back, they're going to do that with anyone. It's not because of something you're doing. They just have that push pull pattern. They're not ready to show up differently. And like the person who runs when you get vulnerable, that's their discomfort with intimacy clashing with your needs. It's not like you caused them to do this. They would do that regardless of who's in front of them being vulnerable. I went through this with my ex for years and I ran into it with dating. And the sooner you reframe this, the better. And the reframe is instead of asking, why aren't they choosing me? Try asking, do I want to choose someone who shows up this way? It's also important to remember that neither one of you in this situation is the problem. The issue is the dynamic you two create together. And it's a dynamic you get to decide if you want to stay in or not. And if you can both decide if you want to change it or not. And usually, it takes two people who are enthusiastic about changing that dynamic to actually change it. And that's kind of hard to find. Episodes that you can learn more about attachment, how it works, would be my episode with Adam Lane Smith, that's numbered 125, Ricky Close, that's episode 48, Julie Manano, she is at the Secure Relationship, that's episode 40, and Dr. Morgan, episode 116. Those are 4 episodes that dive deep into different parts of attachment, and I highly recommend them if you want to understand how attachment works. I also have like an intro episode about the 4 attachment styles, what they are, and just the basics of it. That is episode number 22. It's a solo episode. All right, my last lesson from 200 episodes of Dating Intentionally is dating is more fun when you choose yourself and values over wanting to be chosen. In 200 episodes, one of the biggest lessons that stands out to me is that putting your needs and values at the center of your dating life is how you enjoy it. That is the key. It's how you avoid getting involved with situationships and people who aren't a match. It's how you stay on track and keep your peace, even though obviously you do want connection and a partner. You want it with someone who aligns. You want it with someone who sees your worth as much as you do. Choosing yourself doesn't mean being closed off. It means going after the love you want and giving it a shot, but also it's not settling. When you approach dating from a grounded place where you know what matters to you and what you will and won't tolerate, you're both giving yourself a chance to find love and you're not putting your energy into people who clearly aren't on your level. When you're focused on being chosen, you are compromising on the things that actually keep you from being in a happy and healthy relationship. You're ignoring your gut. You're silencing your needs. You say yes to mediocre situations because you think it's better than being alone. But when you shift the focus to choosing, you step back into the driver's seat. You can walk away from someone who doesn't treat you the way you want to be treated because you know what's best for you long term. And when you have this standard of like, I'm going to be the chooser, you stop seeing rejection as a loss and you start seeing it as clarity. Okay, this didn't work out. I'm going to choose a situation where that person is choosing me back instead of chasing someone who clearly doesn't want me. And this is part of what I mean when I say every no gets you closer to a yes, right? That's what you step into when you realize that choosing yourself looks like loving yourself so much that you're not going to allow yourself to check up on your ex on Instagram. It looks like not allowing yourself to send passive aggressive texts to the person who's clearly hot and cold with you and not responding, right? Like you're like, I choose my own peace over chasing whatever this is, you know? And I think that's when dating really starts to be more fun because you're going from this empowered place of like, I get to decide, I get to choose who I want to be with. I'm not out here trying to be picked. I'm going to do the picking. And it's so much more fun. So, those are my 10 lessons from 200 episodes. I would love to hear in the comments which one you needed to hear the most. Tell me on Spotify or YouTube if you're watching there. You can DM me on Instagram right now at dating.intentionally. If you're listening to this, let me know which one we were like, yes, Talia, like I needed to hear that one. I also took this question to Instagram and I asked the community what advice they got from listening to the show so far that really impacted them. So I want to share some with you that were submitted. So the advice that really resonated with the Instagram community so far is date outside your type. Classic. We love it. It doesn't work for everyone. Because people are like, well, I don't want to date someone I'm not attracted to. Totally get it. But sometimes shaking things up can really help you in your dating journey. Focus on if you like them, not if they like you, which is what we just said. You get to choose your hard. That means you get to decide and choose what challenges you're going to deal with in a relationship. Like when you pick someone to date long term, you are choosing the challenges you are going to deal with. It's part of the acceptance piece that I was talking about earlier. You're accepting who they are, and that means the challenges they come with. And I, just as an example, I've said this many times, my husband Johnny, his sense of humor is me choosing my hard. Sometimes he just has to make a lot of jokes before we get to the serious thing, and I'm like, you know what? I can handle that for the rest of my life. This is something that I know I can do, and I chose that challenge. Another one is give people another date if you're on the fence. Yeah, I mean, if you don't know, there's no harm in just giving it one more date and just keep dating to figure out how you feel. Another one was it's a meetup, not a relationship. So this is referring to early dating where you're just going on one date at a time. You know, you're not going to trip and fall into a relationship. You're just getting to know them and it's pretty low stakes. And another one just to share is keeping my profile updated. So that means consistently tweak things on your dating profile if you're using dating apps. I guess this advice really worked for this person. I know it worked really well for me, and that is just to keep it updated. It helps you stay active on the app, and you can also test out different ways to get people to interact with your profile. Another one is you barely know them. That kind of goes back to the more detached dating, like take it slow. You don't know this person. You don't have to get all riled up about their texting patterns or if they like you because or what their deal is because they're still a stranger, especially in the first few dates. Another one is you don't have to be fully healed. We talked about this on the podcast recently. That fully healed isn't a thing, and I'm glad that that resonated with you. I just want to say thank you so much. This is also just a reminder to drop a review of this show on Apple Podcasts or drop a rating on Spotify if you feel like you've learned something or this has helped you, stay motivated or inspired to keep going. So that helps me a lot. I appreciate your reviews, your ratings, shares, everything. And I just want to say, like, I feel like I'm still just getting started. I know 3 years, it's not a new show. This is, an established podcast with 3 million downloads, hundreds of thousands of listeners. And all I can say is I'm just really excited for the next 100 episodes and beyond. There's just a lot more to cover and get into. And I want to keep helping you know that it's not too late. You're not behind. You're not broken. And if you keep showing up intentionally, things will shift and dating can be fun. And I really hope that by listening to the show so far, you've become more at peace with where you are in your journey and that you've learned to have more trust in the process and trust in yourself, and that you feel more empowered to keep making decisions that align with what you want, even when it means ending a connection prematurely or doing something you wouldn't normally do, like asking someone out. All right. I just want to say that's all I have for you today. Thank you again. Thank you for listening. Thanks for trusting me. Don't forget you're doing great. If this show is helping you, don't forget to follow, rate, and share. Once again, I'm Talia. This is Dating Intentionally, and I'll see you next time.